When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. You understand me? I was born black. I live black. And I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey, man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions asked. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, peace, and a hooroo to the family out there. Welcome to WCC Podcast. I am the Kimba Ajore. We charge colonialism. Actually, let me wipe my can for a second. I don't know. It's not looking clear to me. I think I just did it injustice just now. But welcome to another podcast. Here we go. Let me try this. I was supposed to do this ahead of time, man. Forgive me. Scrambling. I just want to make sure that I'm clear for the people out there. So thanks for joining, man. And you know, for all those people who are going to be tuning in at a later time, appreciate you as well. Make sure that you like and share the podcast. And peace to the family in the chat. Always good to see y'all. Appreciate the support. You know how we do. We're going to continue to build. We charge colonialism. This is your first time being here on our channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're going to continue to build no matter how long it takes. And we're going to continue to have these conversations until we are free. And we will be free from colonialism, racism, all forms of oppression and exploitation of African people. That is the goal. That is the objective. So today we have another serious topic that I want to bring to the people. Today we're going to be talking about the Congo. Put this up here. Yeah. So the continuing crisis that's happening in the Congo, and I put it being the world's dark secret. It's not really a secret. I think what I'm really trying to say is it's an atrocity that's happening that the world doesn't want to talk about. And so I think more people are not conscious of really like what's happening on the ground, and how there's a lot of people who are benefiting off of the misery of the Congo in places that we reside in. And we sit, and I think like I was out today, to be honest. I was out, and I was eating at a restaurant, and I was looking around, and I was just like looking at how so many people were walking around just with no worry, care, just carefree. Not saying that because to be honest, like a lot of people are probably stressing, to be honest. And there's things going on in their personal lives. So I don't mean it in that sense, but it's like the type of concerns, though, the concerns that we have is a bit different. You know, like we're not worried about someone possibly dropping a bomb on our homes or in the hospital, local hospitals or schools, right? Um, we're not worried about a militia, you know, may come into our community and force us to have to leave our residence and seek refuge, you know, miles away in another city or another state. Like it's just a different type of concern, right? Where people are constantly like they wake up, they're constantly wondering, is this going to be their last hour, or if this is going to be their last day? Like that type of concern or worry. Am I going to be able to put food on the table, right? Or put, you know, bring in resources, enough resources for me to be able to eat and keep a shelter over my head, right? We have those worries, but it's a different type of worry, right? And concern. Um, so you know, I was just out and I was just like looking at people as they go in and out, you know, smiling faces. Just it was just different. But I'm saying I'll say it. As I'm looking at these people, I'm thinking about Congo. I'm thinking about, you know, even the crisis in the so-called Middle East, right? In North Africa or West Asia, however you want to categorize it. Um, uh, and I'm looking at how we're able to sit on a pedestal of these people who are suffering. We're able to live the way we live because of the exploitation that's taking place in Congo, that's taking place in Niger, that's taking place in Ghana, that's taking place in occupied Tanzania, and all of these other places, man. And I don't know, it's just it was heavy on my heart, and it's not that I don't think about these things all the time, but in light of just everything that I guess I just like really been you know, making sure that I stay informed about so I can have these discussions with you is making it even feel closer to home. Like I'm really empathizing and you know, yeah, I'm really empathizing with all of the you know, the brutality and you know, the genocide. Let's just say that the genocide and ethnic cleansing that is taking place, right? And there's not enough being done, I think, um, in the diaspora on our part. And trust me, we're dealing with colonialism ourselves. But I think, you know, we have to begin to build those bridges and begin to discuss the world, the future, what the world is going to look like, right? Tomorrow, we have to envision a world outside of imperialism. We have to begin to build a world that's not based on oppression and exploitation, because this social system that we are a part of is based on oppression and exploitation. How can we continue to build up a system that's based on that? Well, we think it's going to change. It's rooted in oppression and exploitation. It's very nature. That's how it was created. So, you know, changing that, taking away the oppression and exploitation, you're just going to create a completely different system. And that's what we're talking about, revolution. Right. So if you're not talking about revolution, you're talking about ways to thrive in a system of oppression and exploitation, a way to get yours. How can I personally come up in this system? Because, hey, there's so many different ways. When they talk about there's so many different ways to make money in this, there's so many different ways to oppress and exploit a person in this system, you know, of colonial capitalism. That's what you're really saying. Like, let me find a way where I can exploit someone so I can get rich, so I can get wealthy. There's no way in the world that you can sit back and be a part of the system and make wealth without oppression and exploitation taking place. And I don't care if you are not directly doing it, you're benefiting somehow. You know, you working with someone that's doing it. You know, you got to connect working with this corporation or this company or this individual that are oppressing and exploiting someone else. You're part of the system, right? That's doing that. So we have to find a way to separate from this and build the world that is not rooted in that. So with that being said, you know, I kind of like went off track, you know, because I had those thoughts. I'm gonna bring it back to what I'm going to talk about today: Congo and continuing crisis, right? But before I do that, let me do a promo again. Peace, my people. And we are a week away from the Malcolm X Symposium that's happening in Boston. I don't know how many people that's tapped in. I've been tapping in, have registered or plan to go. I hope you all can make it over there to Boston, and if you're in the area, it shouldn't be that difficult for you to get there. But if you're out the area, hope that you are able to make it. So Malcolm X Symposium honoring 60 years of the Message to the Grassroots speech. Maybe I have to, you know, wait for me to honor that speech too. Maybe I'll do a segment on the Message to the Grassroots. So join us at the Malcolm X Symposium, celebrating 60 years of his powerful Message to the Grassroots speech, an event that pays tribute to Malcolm X. And again, the focus is going to be on the time period that he spent incarcerated. Now, of course, there's going to be uplifting of the Message to the Grassroots speech. There's going to be debates happening in the spirit of Malcolm X, who was a powerful debater, known for his debates while he was incarcerated. And so there's going to be a look at that time period, which took place in Massachusetts. That's why it's fitting for the symposium to take place in Boston, because that's where he was incarcerated at. And it was during this time in being incarcerated that Malcolm is going to make this transformation, right? And this transformation, well, that's for another discussion. I was going to say he was going through this transformation even prior to being coming into contact with the Nation of Islam. And being converted to the Nation of Islam. So I want to uplift that, because a lot of times the narrative is that the Nation of Islam transformed Malcolm. He was like this. He was the petty, hustler, drug addict when he came to the Nation of Islam. When the reality is he was already making this transition from being that person to someone who wanted to do something different, go in a different direction with his life. And I would say, though it was the Nation of Islam, though him coming into contact with the Nation of Islam, it was a great merger, I should say. And he took his genius and was able to benefit the Nation of Islam, and the Nation of Islam, I would say, benefited Malcolm, at least for the time, before the departure, I would say. But that's for another conversation. But definitely register if you can make it. Make sure that you get out there to Boston. So the next thing is, if you're in the DC area tomorrow, I don't have like a flyer or anything for this, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be descending on the White House. The election is coming up. So I know the Black is Back Coalition is leading a march down to Washington, and the many organizations that are part of the Black is Back Coalition. I think you have the Black Alliance for Peace, that is a member organization, African People's Socialist Party, bunch of others, Black Agenda Report, many organizations that are a part of the Black is Back Coalition. And they will be, actually, this isn't the first time. They do this every year. They've been doing it every year since, I think, 2008 when Obama was elected. And so they've been going down there just to raise the contradictions at that time of Obama's presidency. And they continue to do that every year. This year, of course, there's going to be talks about Palestine, but not just Palestine, what's happening in Africa as well, and in the rest of the world, because African people are everywhere, and we are suffering as a result of this relationship with these colonizers. So that's going to be talked about tomorrow in DC. So if you're in the area, if you're not in the area, definitely get down there and be a part of that. So people are rising up everywhere in different ways. Some people not with the marching, some people are with it. However you want to organize, however you want to resist, make sure that you do something, especially if you're against this social system. So let me share the screen and get to the story. Let me get to the story. What's happening in Congo? Yeah. Well, let me do this video first. This is a short 2-minute video. Bam. Here we go. So I'm gonna open it up with this video, and then we're gonna talk about Congo.
A newly appointed military governor visits the front lines. Democratic Republic of Congo's army has been fighting the M23 armed group, widely understood to be backed by neighboring Rwanda. A coalition of armed groups called Wazalendo has also been fighting M23.
We have the population on our side, and this is why we are now talking about the Wazalendo phenomenon. We cannot deny their existence because they are defending the integrity of the country.
This video, filmed by an armed group, shows its fighters preparing to attack an M23 position. But in the last week, M23's rapidly grown stronger and advanced towards the provincial capital of Goma. More than 500,000 people have fled their homes since M23 restarted an old conflict 2 years ago. All the armed groups involved are accused of atrocities against civilians, including executions and rape. M23's fighters have been filmed and photographed carrying weapons over the border from Rwanda. The US and the EU have sanctioned both Rwandan and Congolese individuals for their roles in the conflict. Rwanda denies backing M23. In this video, fighters show weapons they say were captured from Congolese forces.
To the national and international community, we, M23, want dialogue. We're not partisans of war as people believe.
Every attempt at dialogue has failed. Angola's president, João Lourenço, who's tried to mediate, said M23 is refusing to withdraw and come to the table. It's the latest round of a conflict that began in the 1990s when Rwanda and Uganda invaded Congo and looted its vast mineral wealth. More than 6 million people were killed, and there's been armed conflict here ever since. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
All right. Yeah, that's a conflict that goes further back than hold on. All right, that's a conflict that goes back further than the 90s. And I think like that's for another podcast as well, when we start getting into King Leopold, right, in Belgium, and the France and the United States. All the colonizers began to want a piece of Congo. Congo was like, or is not even like, but Congo, for me, it reminds me of how the colonizers were all in China, right? And they sort of had this open door policy. Everybody wanted a piece of China. This is before China became strong, right? Before the Chinese was able to galvanize and organize the hundreds of millions of people, right, under one state, and began to, understand what was happening to their people. There was a leadership who understand the way to liberate their people was to kick out the colonizers, right? And anybody who wanted to align with the colonizers had to go too. And that was their mentality. And this is where Africans we have to get like that as well. We have to say, hold on, the colonizers, first let's get rid of the colonizers, and then we're going to sit at the table and begin to negotiate and see how we can move forward as a people. but the colonizers shouldn't be sitting at that table. And we don't need no colonizers observing what's happening. Like, that's the sort of direction I think we need to go. But with that being said, though, Congo in particular reminds me of that, because China was looked at a place of exploitation because of the resources and its huge population, right? Able to exploit the labor and the resources there, and create a consumer market as well. A consumer market for their drugs, whether we're talking about opium and other things. With Congo, it's the same thing, right? You have a large population to exploit a huge labor market, and of course the resources. And so everybody want a piece of Congo, everybody want a piece of Africa in general, but everybody want a piece of Congo. Cobalt is looked at as the oil of Congo, right? And cobalt to the Congolese or for Congo is like oil for the Saudi Arabians and Saudi Arabia, right? But the people, there's a vast difference, because the people of Saudi Arabia, at least those people who are in positions of power, are able to really dictate what's happening with those resources, and at least have some sort of leverage. They're able to have some leverage. It seems like the Congolese, really don't have any leverage, or at least they're not taking advantage of the leverage they do have, because the leverage is the resources. So it's just poor leadership. And don't get me wrong, like there's Congolese too. When you really look into this, it's nuanced, because when you look into it, there are Congolese who are in positions of leadership that are definitely fighting to have better terms, right? So I hate making statements like nothing is being done, or there isn't any struggle that's taking place, right? But the reality is the colonizers have been winning, and they're continuing to win. So we need a stronger position and a stronger strategy, right? You have a population in Congo where 60 million people, I think more than 50% of the population, is living in poverty. I don't have the exact numbers. As a matter of fact, why don't we pull up the numbers? I should have had this already, but somewhere around 60 million of the million people in Congo are living on less than $2.15 a day. Just think about that, man. You're talking about a country that has one of the most coveted resources in the world. There's people who are making billions of dollars off cobalt. From your cell phones to your computers, to the electric cars, they're now beginning to they want to mass produce and manufacture, to bring in a new wave of cars that are what is it? That's something free. The green shade. Somebody help me out with this one. I'm losing it right now. But everybody's trying to go green. Oh, fossil fuels. That's what I'm thinking about. So they can reduce the fossil fuels, and with all of this, happening, the cobalt, being mined, and all of these technological changes that are taking place, that needs cobalt, the people of Congo are still living in extreme poverty. And that's a serious contradiction. Let me see. Just wanted to pull up the exact numbers of what's taking place. Look at the World Bank. I know World Bank isn't the best. We got to work with what we got right now. Let me share my screen. All of this is going to lead up to what I want to talk about. Which is that 6.9 million people that are displaced right now in Congo. But all of this is a result of the serious contradiction. Because in that video, and I think this is what triggered me, and the guy in the video, he was talking about the origin goes back to the conflict that began in the 90s, which is was a serious conflict where more than 6 million people lost their lives. I mean, think about those numbers, man. More than 6 million people lost their lives, and perhaps more than that. Am I sharing my screen? Okay, I just want to look at the economic situation right here. Go back up here. Look at is it in here? Right here, DRC. You can see right here, DRC is among the 5 poorest nations in the world. How is the DRC among the 5 poorest nations in the world, man? This is crazy. How is the DRC among the 5 poorest nations in the world? I'm gonna pull something else up while I'm on this topic. I might as well keep going with it. In 2022, nearly 62% of Congolese. Right? What did I say? I said something like 50. I was in the 50s, right? I was being generous. Nearly 62% of Congolese, around 60 million people, live on less than $2.15 a day. About 1 out of 6 people living in extreme poverty in SSA lives in DRC. That's sub-Saharan Africa, right? And I'm tired of using this sub thing, man, because when I say sub, it makes me think of subhuman, right? So I kind of cringe when I hear it, and even when I use it, I just say Africa, but lives in the DRC. So again, like, serious contradiction right there. And just one last thing on this topic I want to pull up, because it goes back to how African people, when we go have these African nations where people are living in extreme poverty, but how Europeans historically, and whoever aligns with the European, whether we're talking about the Indians of East India or the Chinese of China, right? Because there are people who are running those economies who are exploiting Africa as well. We have to call out I don't care if they're not European or not. If somebody is able to benefit at the expense of African people, they have to all be called out. Because when we talk about neo-colonialists, right? We talk about white power and black face. So why can we not call out any of these other exploiters? So let me pull this up top. I'm a Cobot, Stu Cobot. Please. And I've done this before, so I already know the answers to this. But I want to share this. So we look at these Cobot companies that are in this poor in this quote unquote poor nation. Let's take a look at them. And my screen froze. Hold on. I hope y'all can hear. My screen froze for a second there. And this is in a way they're gonna make me subscribe to this. Glencore, I believe, is a Chinese company. If I'm not, no, it's another one that I'm thinking about. But Glencore, it is. Glencore sets to lose crown as top cobalt miner to China. Oh, it's not. I think Glencore is the mix. Let me see. Who owns Glencore? I can't remember. I have to go back to that because I'm trying to think. That might be the state, but the state may have partnered with a European, because sometimes the state, anything that state ran, but I don't think Glencore is though. But just for the sake of me bringing up the state-controlled companies, colonizers be having a huge percentage of ownership, and even the state-run companies, because I guess that they need the means of distributing, right, and the technology that the colonizers have. So I can't use this right here. Oh, that's Bloomberg. That's why. That's why they acting funny. Bloomberg, Bloomberg, he about his money. He's not just going to let me go on his screen, on his site, and look at this information. All right, so I'm just pulling. I'm a little off track right now, but for the sake of looking at Congo and these contradictions, man, we going beyond like the conflict. Why is there a conflict in the first place? As I mentioned in the video, there's this conflict over resources. These Congolese people are fighting over control over land and resources. And we'll get into the M23 and so forth. But resources for what? Who are they selling to? Who's buying these resources, right? So when Africans had got forced into being a part of this global economy, we had to shift our means of survival. We had to change the way that we made a living and survive in this economy and become a part of this economy. And with that being said, now when we look at these conflicts over resources, it has a lot to do with us being a part of a social system that forces you to sort of exploit, and oppress people. And you look at these companies right here. We got number one, that's medical project is a surface mine situated in Katanga, Democratic Republic of Congo, owned by the Eurasia Resources Group. That being said, Eurasia. You got the next company on here. Not even going to go into their profiles. We'll get into. I'll save it for another conversation, another podcast. As far as like who these owners are, you see China Railroad Group, owned by China Railroad Group, Sicko Mines, KOV Mine, Mutanda, Mushamba. If you get into these, trust me, like some of these owned by Glencore. That's what we was looking at earlier. And you can't get fooled by African names, because once you start going into who the shareholders are, you begin to see Asian faces, European faces. You'll see some African faces too, but these companies are usually like multinational companies with European faces and ownership all throughout them. Glencore. I'm gonna come back to Glencore because it eludes me. I think it's a Chinese company, but I can't remember. But if anybody could do a quick search on who owns Glencore, that'd be helpful. All right, let me get into this story. 6.9 million people displaced in Congo. Conflict uproots record 6.9 million people in Congo. This story came out October 30th. So conflict and escalating violence have uprooted a record 6.9 million people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's almost 7 million people. Man, just think about that. Almost 7 million people. I live in a city whose population is around 1.5 million. The metropolitan area of Philadelphia, you may have about 4 million people. So in the city and in the entire metropolitan, somewhere around 4 million, I think the number is. But in the city itself, somewhere between, I guess you could say like 1.5 and 2 million people. That's the population. All right. So when I think about these things, I'm just like, just imagining like the whole city or metropolitan area had to relocate, man. It would be crazy. I think like New York City's population might be around like 11 million, so maybe larger than this, but 6.9 million people, mostly in the east of the country. The International Organization for Migration said on Monday, years of rebel conflict and recurrent natural disasters have helped fuel one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. Most of those forced to flee their homes live in the eastern provinces of North Kivu, South Kivu, Ituri, and Tanganyika, according to the data collected by the United Nations, or Tanganyika, I should say, according to the data collection by the United Nations. And when we think about how these impoverished countries aren't able, when people are displaced because of natural disasters and so forth, like they're unable to develop the infrastructure, right, to help help what am I trying to say? Like not fend off, but help with the natural disasters that it can make it less damaging, I should say, on the population, right? Because they don't have the infrastructure. Many people lose their lives or have to move and be displaced. So this goes back to colonial capitalism, uh, um, undermining the economy and the people's ability to be able to survive and defend themselves against natural and unnatural disasters. In North Kivu alone, up to 1 million people have been displaced due to the ongoing conflict with a Tutsi-led rebel group M23. For decades, the Congolese people have been living through a storm of crisis. The most recent escalation of the conflict has uprooted more people in less time, like rarely seen before, said Fabian Sambusi, IOM's head of mission in Congo. IOM said since June it had built 3,347 emergency shelters and distributed 7,715 kits with no food supplies, but warned that operations remain underfunded. All right. And this is devastating story, man. Think about it. 6.9 million people again. And then, there's people who are losing their lives, women who are being brutalized and raped, during these conflicts. That are women and children are always the most vulnerable during these conflicts. So all of these things are happening. And when it comes to the M23, as you mentioned, M23 is mostly made up of Tutsi, the ethnic group, the Tutsi ethnic group. And of course, there's still that, spillover from the genocide in 94 in Rwanda. And M23 is said to be supported by the Rwanda government, which they deny. But the thing about the M23, so let me get into what I want to say about this. And it would be good to have conversations with people on the ground. That's one of the things I want to begin to have more dialogue with people who are on the ground. Because when it comes to the M23, these are Africans, right, who are in conflict with other Africans. And this is going back to the resources that I talked about. We're fighting each other over resources that colonizers are really benefiting the most from. And everybody's trying to survive. But when it comes to the M23, I guess like what I want to say about them is, I'll say this. There's an atrocity happening and there's people to blame on both sides. I don't really want to condemn the M23 because the M23 has made demands. I guess what I want to find out more is what is the government doing to escalate this situation? Because if you look at the background, the M23 was it came out of they formed a group, and I think April 2012 they used to be a part of. They actually merged into the Congolese military during a peace treaty, a peace treaty that happened prior to 2000. What was it? March 23rd, 2012. I think I might have the numbers mixed up. Let me see. But there was a peace treaty, M23, because the peace treaty that was made on March 23rd, because they did not the government didn't uphold, at least this is what M23 is saying, didn't uphold their end of the peace treaty. They broke away from the military and formed the M23, which is the March 23rd movement. And that's what the March 23rd movement is. It's a group that is fighting in East Africa over control over that, key territory in East Congo. And so, the reason I'm like really hesitant, with, making a criticism, I can definitely criticize as far as what's happening with people who are on the ground. Lives are being lost, 6.9 million. It shouldn't, that many people. It's ridiculous. There definitely needs to be a sit down. There needs to be some sort of negotiation. Things can happen in a way where these Africans do not have to pick up arms and fight one another. And when I was looking at, I'll share this, when I was looking at the treaty itself, because I said, let me see what these demands are. And I was trying to find out what what demands were not met in the treaty. Because I looked over the treaty and I was wondering what demands weren't met, because I can't find that right now. I'm continuing to do my research. But this is what the argument is this is the argument being made by M23, because the government didn't uphold its end of the bargain. So if you go through this treaty, it's 23 pages, so I'm not going to read it, but there's demands or requests for political prisoners, a list of political prisoners that M23 wanted released. So was it that the political prisoners weren't released? Was that the demand? It was some sort of in the peace treaty, there was talk of administrative control over East Congo, though that there wouldn't be a breakaway state, but it was more autonomy that was going to be given to, I guess, the leadership, those members of M23 over that region. But they would still be under the administration, though, of the government. So that was in the treaty as well. Was that part of the bargain? Treaty not upheld. I think there was something in the treaty that I seen discussions about was the administration, political prisoners, some other things that I seen in here. But as I was going through this, I was just wondering what was it, and so I'll find that out. Do some more research, but I guess when it comes to the government, is the government doing enough to prevent this from happening, or is the government, trying to dictate how the people of East Congo should live? Are they imposing rules, control over that part of the region that because at the end of the day, these are artificial borders, man. And I think that there's more that we need to know before we really condemn, a group of people. But at the end of the day, especially I'm just saying, these Africans who are living under colonial conditions. But I just wanted to uplift this story, though, so that we understand what's happening. And I think that there's more that we can do in the diaspora to help resolve these problems, because the colonizers don't want to resolve. They love the chaos. Keep it going as long as they get the resources. But if there's a way that I think that Africans within these other countries that are in Africa and in the diaspora can begin to be more involved in the conflicts in Africa without the colonizer at the table, I think we'll come out with better solutions. Right. Again, we have to create a new system, a new social order that's not rooted in oppression and exploitation. So again, if anybody too, may know more on the situation on the ground, that'd be great. I definitely would like to know what demands were not being met, and if that is the case, why isn't the government meeting those demands? So we have to we get into a situation where we kind of shift the blame on one party. Oh, the other thing I came across, they were supposed to form their own political party. That was the other thing. There was other demands as well, but I was wondering, like, is this something, because they were supposed to form their own political party and go through the process of the political process of attaining their objectives and goals without the armed conflict. So we're going to continue to get into this, man. It's a story I'm going to cover from Congo to Darfur to Chad to Ghana. We'll look at all of these stories, and also in the diaspora from Haiti to Jamaica to the United States, wherever African people are. We got to begin to examine our problems and understand the fundamental issue of it all is colonialism at the end of the day. But we have to go beyond just saying, colonialism and the colonizer, and like really develop some practical solutions among ourselves. Now we know what the problem is, but let's get together as African people, sit down and say, how can we build the new social order that isn't rooted in oppression and exploitation and isn't affiliated or associated with the current social economic system? How do we break away from it? And I think the only way we can do that is meeting among ourselves as African people, African revolutionaries, because at the end of the day, it's a revolution that's needed. Anything less than that is reform and continuing to be a part of this social order. So with that being said, man, that's what's happening in Congo. I'll be back with more on this story after I, again, do some more, digging in, because I've seen somebody mention Kagame. Yeah, Kagame, man, because the government, again, is backing this atrocity that's taking place. 6.9 million people is a lot, man. 7 million people is a lot of people who can no longer, live where they lived before, whole life uprooted, and have to figure out how they're going to survive. What's tomorrow? Where are they going to be a week from now, 2 weeks from now? Are they ever going to be able to go back? Or do they have to, begin a new life somewhere else? Right? This is the situation. And, final thoughts on this is, as I was looking at this story, I began to think about colonialism and how the European was able to expand his control over the world. And I bring it up because I see, signs of that in these conflicts that we have among ourselves over territory and land. Because even with what's happening in East Africa, Rwanda, that border, is disputed. In Congo and Rwanda at some point, may be in a war with each other. I mean, you can say there's a conflict happening between the two, whether it's direct, not happening directly now, but there's definitely been conflict with the Congolese and Rwanda at that border, happening for decades. But, it makes me think, like, even this move in East Africa with Rwanda backing that, Rwanda trying to expand its control into Congo, right? And this all goes back to colonialism and how the America was expanded its borders beyond the Louisiana after the Louisiana Purchase, and I'm thinking about Texas. And what did they do with Texas? They began sending Europeans into Texas, which was under Mexico control. It was part of Mexico. And they kept sending people over there. And the Mexicans was worried about Texas being taken from them. So they stopped migration of Europeans into Mexico. But then the people who were in Texas revolted against the Mexican government. They had a large enough population there that they could revolt now, had the strength to revolt against the Mexican government. And there were some losses, but Texas eventually became independent as a result, of the rebellion of these Europeans in Texas. So, and that's, sort of thing. And then what happened was the goal was now Texas will become independent, but then it will merge itself into the United States government. the United States empire. So, that sort of strategy could be at play as well here. We have an independent state, but now Rwanda has a lot more control over this region than the Congolese government. But that's a whole. I know I'm. The brain is working. The brain is working right now, man. But I'm just. It all goes back to the nature of the system, colonial capitalist system, man. That needs to just eat away at land. And if there's people on that land, then you either have to go or you have to come under our control. And once you come under our control, you're you can easily be manipulated. You can easily be exploited as a result of that. So I don't know. I'm always looking at the signs, man. I'm always looking at history and patterns. And that's what I see now. But if we look at those patterns and see them repeating themselves, then we know what we got to do to prevent it from happening, and making sure that we put out the right narrative. So with that being said, man, appreciate everybody for tapping in. I think I went on long enough. Conrad Akata said Berlin Conference. So what we got going on here. Yeah, Berlin Conference, a major factor in all of these African problems, fashion and borders, irrespective of tribal areas and politics, makes for disharmony and turmoil, resulting in sociological diseases. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at too when I was talking about these borders and what's happening in East Congo, because at the end of the day, you got a people who are now under a government that was not under this government, under this government prior to colonialism, right? It wasn't that setup, wasn't that kind of setup. So now we have the instituting of these artificial borders and, a government within these borders, and those people who are within those borders have automatically become citizens or subjects, right, of the government. And let's we can use the U.S. example that I gave after the Mexican-American War. When Mexico lost its territories to the United States, we're talking about California, what's now New Mexico, Texas, what's now Utah, Arizona, all of that territory, which was Mexican. That was Mexico at one point. It became the United States territory after the Mexican-American War. So now in this United States territory, all of those people who lived under the Mexican government were now subjects of the United States government, right? And so that's what happened. So, your life changed. Now you have to follow the rules and control of people you never even seen. They never even seen these people who call themselves a government that had control over them now, right? And that, again, these type of when you begin to look at the way things develop and really get into the nuances of it all, I mean, it's really heinous, man. It's really heinous at the end of the day, but it has become normalized. And that's the one thing too, when it comes to what's happening in Congo, again, with the 6.9 million, I talk about Darfur, been talking about them recently, and I'll be talking about Darfur again, Sudan, probably within the next week. Just want to keep everybody updated and begin to, really examine what's taking place there, and then call out who's benefiting from it all as well. But when you look at all of this, we can't start to normalize it. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that, we normalize these. Well, we have. I guess we got to this point, right? We've gotten to this point where, as a world, and this goes back to the story I was telling earlier in my day out, and just looking at everybody and just we're zoned out. We're living without a care of what's happening in the rest of the world, as if it doesn't impact us or affect us, right? And so we'll continue to have these conversations. So we have 10:25. Appreciate y'all. We went close to an hour. I don't want to keep everybody all night. So, you know, continue to build, man. Again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure you like and share people so they can tap in later on. And if this is your first time being here, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I think next time we'll be back. We won't be back with the podcast book club this Saturday, I don't think, because so much is going on. But Frank will be on Sunday at 1 p.m. So tap in with Frank on Sunday. And I'll be back on Monday for sure. And yeah, you know, Monday, actually, I want to talk one of these podcasts. I'm going to talk about the genocide that's taking place. Again, America committing a genocide, man, on Muslims. That's something I have to uplift. I'm you know, it's still, at the end of the day, it's another situation I don't want us to normalize because it's not in us as African people to normalize and act like, you know, genocide isn't happening because these, man, if anything, we should be worried. We should be worried that they're going to up the ante on us. They already, I mean, we in a position, we've been through all of this, right, as African people. Where we see millions of people enslaved. You know, our Mayafa is still going on. As Africans, we're experiencing the Mayafa. But when I look at people who are openly resisting the European and what the Europeans are doing as a result of that resistance, I mean, we can go back to 9/11 and what took place after 9/11. Anybody who looked a certain way, right, and was associated with a certain group of people was getting off left and right. And so as African people, right, when we that red, black, and green, what happens when the red, black, and green is looked at as, anybody who represents that are looked at as a terrorist organization? What? Like, I'm repping the red, black, and green no matter what. You know what I'm saying? They could throw the label on. So, you know, but with that being said, you know, I gotta prepare for that consequence, right? But what happens when you know that becomes a symbol of terrorism, and those who rep that become terrorists? Anybody who, you know, talks about colonialism, imperialism, racism, you know, as part of a terrorist organization, right? They already got the black extremist identity, black identity extremists, right? But they can up the ante any minute. So if we don't push back and align with people too that are fighting colonialism, you know, we're gonna have a serious problem. Because at the end of the day, man, I think sometimes we get caught up in because there's narratives as far as like who likes us and don't, you know, who don't like us. Man, when you have war, you know, the strategy is like, yo, who's my enemy's enemies? All right, yo, you fighting? Hey, we'll support that. Here's some resources. So when we get in trouble, where are these people now that we supported? Where are these people that we was backing? Right? Where are you now? And then, you know, if their true colors shine at that time, then we know what time it is. We know what's up, right? But let's give people an opportunity to show those true colors. So, you know, with that being said, man, for the 5th time, appreciate y'all. I'm signing out. Uhuru, you know, Black Power, power to the people.